Okay, nothing new in theaters right now because we're all living in the prologue to a multiplayer sandbox shooter, so let's catch up with this newish feature from a few months ago that many of you have asked me to review. You know, it's weird to think about, but when you get right down to it, H.P. Lovecraft's entire shtick claim to fame was being basically an Alex Jones, Sean Hannity type guy, but who could think and write in complete legible sentences. Like, the dude could write, hell yeah, but when you get right down to it, he was still pretty much another super racist dude who was like so racist that even people noticed and gave him shit for it in like the 20s. And a lot of his big recurring motifs about sinister ancient murder cults and people who are actually subhuman monsters in disguise or in their bloodline and unfathomably massive cosmic horror were all blatant metaphors for him being suspicious of Jewish people, terrified of black people, and how the scariest thing he could possibly imagine was a universe where he might not be the center of it. You know, so basically not exactly that unusual a perspective for a paranoid, pissy white guy, but he was good enough with the fantastical prose that when you read his better stuff, you could actually get like inside his head and experience how terrifying it is to absorb the world through a psychological prism that profoundly fucked up by hate and fear and all the other shit that was wrong with him. You know, until you got to the subtext again and you go, oh man, I appreciate the contributions to the genre, but I gotta take a shower now. Anyway, Color Out of Space has long been noteworthy as paradoxically one of the major Lovecraft stories you can mostly enjoy without being yanked aside by the other stuff, but also one of the hardest to adapt because the cosmic horror is really cosmic in this one. It's an alien invasion via infection story where the alien presence is mostly just a colored light so otherworldly no one can describe it, and it makes equally tough to visualize bad things happen because that's what it does. Sure, the core setup of a meteorite crashing into an isolated rural community and gradually causing the soil, plants, water, animals, and people to mutate and, where applicable, go completely mad has been ripped off, borrowed, unofficially adapted dozens of times in the genre. But this new adaptation from Richard Stanley, the long-absent cult director making his first return in a while, look it up, is the first stab in a long time at actually making a closest retelling of the work. And while it's amusingly impressive to realize that, yes, the color and the full esoteric scope of its dread remains as difficult to render as ever, it manages to plant its flag as one of the more solid Lovecraft movies to date simply by succeeding in the main place where the author himself often fell down: humanity. You see, in lieu of the story's focus on an investigator into these strange happenings, the film fixes its perspective on the unfortunate rural family whose property the alien object happens to make impact, meaning that instead of the horrifying changes wrought by the color being experienced as shock changes out of the blue, we're front and center for both the nerve-wracking breakdowns in group sanity and the grisly body horror as they play out in wrenching, deliberate detail right in front of us. And good lord, if H.P. Lovecraft, but with human empathy, is not really, really painful and difficult to watch. Which makes this a bold choice, one that's almost assured to rub many the wrong way considering how the movie is being marketed as more of a spacey head trip and a chance to see top-billed Nicolas Cage lose his shit over alien weirdness, but those who can acclimate to Stanley's old-school pacing and the grueling nature of just how dark and nasty things are gonna get in this one are likely to come away pretty shaken, but at least impressed by how much more visceral Lovecraft gets if you can feel right in the middle of things on a non-psychological level, more on a human, oh god, that looks like a nasty kind of level. Now that's not to say if you showed up to see Cage be cagey you won't get it. Few actors can manage the quick change from realistically defeated sad sack to manic livewire as authentically as Nicolas Cage, and the reworking of the farmer dad character into a frustrated loser who attempts to hold his already dysfunctional family together in a farm life none of them actually like and he isn't even good at makes for a fascinating dynamic. Plus his natural off-kilterness ends up going great with how over-the-top and random the monster and gore stuff starts to get. That's a good thing too, since it ends up not being much meat on the bone otherwise thematically. Certainly not apart from the visuals and the actor's presence. Other than the obvious gestures in the direction of vague environmentalism, the film isn't trying to elevate or modernize its material all that much beyond being a good horror flick with a mildly tragic undercurrent. And to the degree it succeeds, I'll call it an 8 out of 10. Yeah, this one's definitely worth a watch.